Hi, I love horror. Do you? Welcome to Love Horror Podcast, Episode 7. In the last episode, I took a look at some more trivia from the Friday the 13th movies. That time it was part 5 and part 6. This time, I'm going to take a look at some other movies that are released around about the same time, most of them anyway, that are either to do with camping or set in a summer camp. It won't be trivia, it will just basically be a little synopsis and I'll tell you about them. And I'll also tell you if I recommend checking them out or not, things like that. It'll probably be a fairly short episode this week. Then next week, I will be back to Friday the 13th trivia, looking at parts 7 and 8. Okay, number 1, we have The Burning from 1981. This came out around about the same time as Friday the 13th Part 2, and it feels very much like a Friday the 13th movie. Let's have a look at what it's about first. A former summer camp caretaker was horribly burned from a prank that went wrong. He lurks around an upstate New York summer camp, hell-bent on killing the teenagers responsible for his disfigurement. It had a budget, surprisingly, of about $1.5 million. If you know who Tom Savini is, he has done a bit of acting, but he really got his start doing special effect makeup, things like that. He did the special effects in the first Friday the 13th movie, and he and Cunningham didn't come back for part 2 because they had some disagreements about the script. And instead of doing Friday the 13th part 2, Tom Savini did the special effects in The Burning. So if you like Friday the 13th and you haven't seen The Burning, I recommend you do watch it at least once to give it a shot. It's one of those movies that fans quite like now, and they kind of wonder why it never had a sequel. Because I think it could have done with at least one more sequel, because it could have easily become another franchise like Halloween, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, but for some reason they did the one and didn't go any further with that. 2, this is one that a lot of horror fans have probably heard of, even if you haven't heard of The Burning. This is Sleepaway Camp, which spawned several sequels, including a Return to Sleepaway Camp in the 2000s. It's about a girl who is traumatized and painfully shy. She's Angela Baker, and she is sent away to a summer camp with her cousin. Not long after Angela's arrival, things start to go horribly wrong for everyone who has sinister intent, or even less sinister, or less honourable intents towards her or her cousin. So anybody that messes with her or her cousin basically seems to either have a horrible accident or dies. That was released in 1983 and had a budget of $350,000 estimated. The sequels feel a lot lower budget, but I recommend you at least check out this one, see what you think. And I would watch at least number 2, that's okay. Really, the sequels aren't too bad. It's more that one of them, I can't remember which one was it. I think it was part 3, was only basically a best of clips. It was just clips from the other movies and it was really boring. But I recommend you at least check out the first one and maybe the first couple. Then we have number 3, Madman. It was released in 1982, so in between Sleepaway Camp and The Burning. It's set at a summer camp, like Friday the 13th is. It's a camp for youths when a arrogant preteen calls out the name of a mass serial killer called Madman Mars. Suddenly, counselors are being maimed and slaughtered in various ways. Interestingly, it has an estimated budget of $350,000, the same as Sleepaway Camp. Again, if you like horrors, especially slashers, if you're a slasher fan, give it a shot. Now, this one here is a newer one. This newer one is Camp Blood, and it's actually from 2000. It's straight to VHS and DVD. Let's see what it's about. Out and about on a camping trip, so it's not really a summer camp, they're just out camping in the woods without a care in the world. 4 campers find themselves in an unknown world with the death of their guide, and they're at the mercy of a cold-blooded killer. The trip of fun in the sun soon took a wrong turn, with friends slowly disappearing, and so does their chance of getting out alive. It was followed by 3 sequels, Camp Blood 2 in 2000 as well, Within the Woods in 2005, for whatever reason it didn't have the Camp Blood branding, and Camp Blood First Slaughter in 2014. Even though there was a third one called Within the Woods, sometimes in some markets, First Slaughter is titled Camp Blood 3 First Slaughter. Now, this one is harder to recommend because it depends. It depends how patient you are, how willing you are to watch really low budget shows. Because watching an 80s low budget movie is a little different than watching a more recent low budget movie, if you see what I mean. It's very, very low budget with terrible acting. The reason I put this on the list is because I see huge potential in it for, say, like a reboot with a decent budget. I like the idea of it being very Friday the 13th, a killer in the woods, and it felt very much like a Friday the 13th movie in a way. It's apart from being terrible acting, although some could say that about Friday the 13th, but it's even worse. Camp Blood could also be a reference to the Friday the 13th movies, as if you've seen Friday the 13th movies, you'll remember that the locals call Camp Crystal Lake Camp Blood. So I recommend, if you're willing to be patient and check out a low budget show with terrible acting, just check it out, just for the hell of it, just give it a shot. The sequel was even worse, so easily miss that one out, and I'm not sure if I've seen the other two. I can't remember now. I definitely haven't seen the 2014 one. I can't remember if I ended up watching Within the Woods or not. But at least, if you're willing to sit through a very low budget show with terrible acting, just because you're a horror fan and want to see what it's like, go ahead, give it a shot. But in its current sort of state, it's very, very low budget and, to the extent of being terrible. And I was hoping with sequels, when I realized there was a sequel, I was kind of hoping that maybe because the first one had been out, maybe it did well, maybe they had got more investors on board, and maybe it would be higher value production. However, at least number 2 certainly is not. Now, number 5, Cheerleader Camp. An unknown killer is killing off the members of a small cheerleader group at a remote cheerleader training camp. It is also known as Bloody Pom Poms. It's from 1988. A sequel was planned by producers of the original film, but the project was eventually scrapped and made into another movie with an unrelated film called Camp Fear, and that was produced and financed by another production company entirely. However, a film was shot in 2014 based on the original Cheerleader Camp 2 outline called Cheerleader Camp to the Death. So there you go, 5 films set either in summer camps or people out camping. There are more, obviously, there's more set, perhaps not in summer camps, perhaps there isn't as many of them, but there is plenty of movies set. There is plenty of other movies that are set with people out camping, normally in the woods or out in a cabin, and they're being killed by a killer. Plenty of slashers like that. This is just 5 I picked, including a couple that I thought the average person may not know about. So yeah, next week I'll be back to trivia from the Friday the 13th movies. This next time it will be parts 7 and 8. So that is part 7, which has the girl with psychic powers, and part 8, which is set on a cruise ship and in New York City. As a reminder, you can find this podcast and subscribe to this podcast via iTunes. We are in the iTunes podcast directory. If you have any suggestions for the next episode or just this podcast in general, then you can email me at lovehorrorpodcast@yahoo.co.uk. That's lovehorrorpodcast without the question mark, or one word, lovehorrorpodcast@yahoo.co.uk. Thanks for tuning in.